3, 2, 1.
With Rachel Stone, you enter a world of espionage and excitement. She is an intelligence agent, a woman who stands alone to face the threats of a powerful global peacekeeping organization and prevent the loss of priceless assets. Now the question is, can he inspire us with his intelligence and courage to experience the charm and excitement of his world? Gal Gadot plays Rachel Stone, a member of a covert peacekeeping operation called Charter. She plays the role of a rookie MI6 agent who is moved around the world on a mission. Not enough focus on her character and a lack of attention to details have reduced the story appeal of the film. Sophie Okundo's lifeless performance as her boss, Nomad, and the lack of logical justification for casting this actress in her role make Nomad's character seem incomplete and unrelatable. Matthias Scheffer's portrayal of Jack Della and the transgressions embodied in the role paint a similar picture of Tom Cruise's directorialism in Minority Report and indifference to actors. Weaknesses of Heart of Stone: inadequate focus on characters, a weak screenplay, poor acting, and inefficient direction make this film's attempts to imitate the patterns found in similar action films another weakness. The film tries to introduce an action film with an attractive female protagonist by adding a little excitement, but it seems that Rachel Stone's characterization is done to a small degree, and her gender doesn't have much impact on the story. Rachel Stone's character is not fully fleshed out, and the audience doesn't get to know her enough to get deeply involved in her story. This issue seems to be a kind of laziness in the writing of the film, similar to inappropriate editing. The length of the film, the presence of irrelevant scenes in it, introducing a character and forgetting about him in the rest of the story show that there is little attention paid to the details of the story and the development of the characters. Heart of Stone is not terrible as an actual film or even as content. Instead, it seems like this movie is just another data point in a series of movies that people are shown, kind of like audience feedback and preferences for similar stars and styles in other movies. This movie seems to have been created just to satisfy Netflix's demand and its new rating. Poor filmmaking doesn't help Gadot perform her character well. Gal Gadot is able to perform good physical movements, but her weakness is in conveying the emotions and different moods of her character. The subject of the film and the violations in justifying the actions of the characters. There are problems with providing deeper interpretations of the moral and philosophical principles that exist in the story. Violations in the logic of the story are clearly visible. For example, the lack of sufficient questioning by the main character about the powers and consequences of using the algorithm in the story in general. The weak points of the movie Heart of Stone are poor filmmaking, inappropriate direction, violations in the justification of characters and philosophy, insufficient transfer of emotions, and violations in the plot and logic of the story. A self-conscious attempt to build a spy franchise around Gal Gadot. Heart of Stone plays a poor woman-like Mission Impossible, and largely neutralizes even its star's surprising charisma, despite the sprinkling of action moments scattered throughout its 2 hours. This Netflix flick plays like an inoffensive but lifeless supplement to a you-might-like feature that, unfortunately, you probably won't. Almost like a Mad Magazine riff on the spy versus spy comic strip, this semi-interesting premise casts Gadot as Rachel Stone, introduced as a kid agent at Britain's MI6, tasked with sitting in a van and providing information to people. Hardened field agents, however, as it turns out, are actually lethal agents for a secret group known as PRISM, a spy network that is merely a myth among his colleagues at MI6, and work to defeat threats using an advanced artificial intelligence called Heart, identified with only playing card names Jack of Hearts, etc. Stone's Charter audience includes his tyrannical boss Sophie Okundo, and a savvy tech guru army of thieves Matthias Scheffer, who feeds him information and instant invoices possibilities on a device somewhere between Minority Report and CBS's Person of Interest. All of this activity, of course, comes undercover from Stone's MI6 crack team, led by Parker Jamie Dornan, a few years removed from his 50 Shades of Grey service, who finds himself on the tail of a skilled hacker. Arose is done by Elia Bott, who manages to break into their communications during a 20-minute pre-credits sequence in the Italian Alps. It's at that point that Heart of Stone takes an unexpected turn that, frankly, I hope gives more to the movie than keeps the show going. Instead, the situation becomes a somewhat elaborate game of spy versus spy while making pit stops at various international locations, while making pit stops at various international locations. It also allowed Aston to take considerable punishment. Heart of Stone, directed by Tom Harper, whose last broadcast effort, The Aviators, didn't quite stay in the air, taps into Godot's inherent likability, a ruthless factor that weighs on, yes, the heart without giving it enough standout. The elements of this exercise make it feel like more than a mission impossible. At least Godot's previous action-packed effort for Netflix, Red Alert, brought playfulness and humor to the well-worn genre. By contrast, even the most eye-catching morsels here, a collection on and around a pillow, come to mind. The difficulty seems not to justify consuming the whole thing, of course. No one has a monopoly on these kinds of thrillers, and Godot excels even when she plays a hero. He is a mortal who cannot deflect bullets. However, Heart of Stone's structure, starting in the middle and offering little in the way of background, doesn't help separate Stone from many cinematic spies. In the end, this movie comes across as just another movie stitched together from parts of others. By that measure, even if its heart is in the right place, it's the other pieces that feel a little out of place. The movie Heart of Stone seems to have few effective dialogues, and most of its action and story elements are inspired by other movies and executed with lower quality. The elements of innovation in the story of the introduction of artificial intelligence play an important role in the story, but the film still seems to be just a tool for showing off special effects. The content of the film is mostly repetitive and unmotivated. This movie tries to be original in some way, but it still doesn't have the same impact as its predecessors, and it suffers from being repetitive.